I also go into textile shops. Sometimes they're mislabeled, so I cut off a corner and I go out in the parking lot and I burn it. And then I can tell that it's a pure material. I've had many times where there are a couple men sitting in the car because they don't go in the fabric store because their wife is buying some fabric. And if a woman goes in a fabric store, often she's in there for a while. And so I'll go out there and I'm doing this. And usually on the third time I've done this, the men will get out of the car and say, "What are you doing?" I'm sitting there and I'm just burning. But if I burn a little piece of fabric, I can tell the surface, if there's any treatment, and what the fiber content is. And for the dyes I work, I need all natural. It can be linen, silk, or cotton, anything, but it can't be anything else. And so everything I start with is white to begin with. So I'm in the textile field, I'm a weaver, but I weave rugs that are monochromatic, light colored, and I paint the image on top. All this is dye that I put in a sort of thickened, like jello, a seaweed paste, and that allows me to paint with dyes that are thick, that are then steamed, and then they move into the fabric as though they're dyed, and then the seaweed paste is rinsed off. So if we want to, we got a lot of people here, this is great. We're going to move down here a little bit. So that this exhibition spans about 30 years. And so I grew up in a quirky house in New Hampshire. We had lift latches, no doorknobs. We had these rooms, you could not build it in this day and age. And so I was attracted to funky spaces. So the first pieces in this series started in grad school in 1990. And so, like, this is a quirky staircase in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. That is in Ohio, New Bedford, Asheville. The color palette is from Asheville, and the story is Asheville, but it's another rendition of that one. It's the loading dock outside the first studio I lived in. So they're all from some place that I draw from memory. I draw from memory. And so it's not like a photograph, it's in my interpretation of the architecture. But my background, as she mentions, in painting and sculpture, so I have a good handle on space and form. I'm working flat, but I'm about space and form. And so I also love old houses. They have been, they've moved doors, like in the middle of our kitchen, there was the old sort of space where the boarding room ended, and we had extended. So you have all this. Sorry. So in the house I grew up with, we had this, like, halfway through a room, the floor changed because a wall had been moved. And so that idea of adding the history of architecture, I chose to work with, where I work with, like, probably a lot of you are familiar with crazy quilts. It's just all this fabric. So I do a crazy quilt that's all white fabrics. And then I paint the image on top of the crazy quilt so that you have a piece of fabric that goes through in and out of color as though things have been moved or could move. And that was my attribution to those alterations and things that old houses have. An old house hardly is the way it was built. Things have changed, the usage, all that. So that's the sort of history of the architecture and the crazy quilt element. A lot of mine, I grew up at the end of a dirt road, northern New Hampshire. So I didn't grow up with city gray. I grew up and I have to say, probably here, the fall in New England is second weekend in October. There ain't no place on earth. And but northern, there's an intensity, especially in a rural environment. And so that is a spring palette, fall, that's the next series. This was zinnias, this is fall, winter. So they're all from either a bouquet or a snippet of a rural seasonal environment. So then I had this idea. So this one has a whole lot of words silk screened on it, and I have a couple others in that series where my whole thesis and my graduate thesis is silk screened onto a couple big pieces, because I think a word has a vibration, and I've since been proved wrong. I thought the vibration, if I say something, like I say this, it goes and it's in this wall. Well, a scientist corrected me. I say this, it went through the wall and it keeps on going because it's a vibration. but it still started this whole series. So you'll see, it's called The Walls Have Ears. So there's words silk-screened all over the surfaces as though the stories of different things got lodged in the architecture. Because often in Fear an Old House, there's a sense there. And maybe it's an energetic presence that's left there. It's not the words, but that idea that, I was so disappointed when that scientist crashed my theory. I still like the idea that the walls have ears because of what they've heard and what they still keep.
It still works.
So then there was a period that moved into a blue period. Okay, so everybody has a thing things happen in life. So when I first moved to Asheville, there was a house fire, and the house I grew up burned to the ground. And I hadn't left, I'd gone to residency, so pretty much I lost my life up to 30. All the artwork, the journals, just all that, all kinds of words, just things. Luckily my mother was Scottish country dancing and didn't go home that night, so that's all that matters. But my life, as you can see, I process where I am, my life through my art. I'm not an angry person. I tried to do, I was so pissed. I tried to do all kinds of things, but it took me about 10 years to end up at another series, but during that period, the color left. I didn't go black and white. I got black and white clothes. I got rid of all my color. I let go of the color in my wardrobe and moved to a more monochromatic, and I went to this blue period. No, it's all good. Things happen. No, I see your face. My mother was Scottish country dancing. That is all that matters. That is all that matters. So the blue period came in, and this was out of a dream and all that writing. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to here. And there's different things. So first I'll talk about this piece. This is a piece that is, I love winter. I was born in the winter, so I love winter. Or I should say I was born in a northern winter, February 1st, in New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire. That's a good winter birthday. And so this was inspired by, in New Hampshire, and probably here, you've got storm doors, things are built, they are sturdy. So I went to North Carolina, they got these tobacco barns, and they're like leaning like this. They're not quite falling over, but they're like almost falling over, and you can see right through them. They've got these slats, for aeration. But they have some that look like they should be condemned. They're like just barely, but they're full of tobacco. And that's no longer there. Now I've been in Asheville 30 years. The tobacco industry has gone. But when I first moved there, and this piece is from that period, it was a very different kind of architecture. This also, the leaves started coming in. I was doing some design work for a friend. He was starting the first brewery in Asheville, and I did his logo. And when I had to drop it off, I went inside, and someone hadn't watered their ficus tree. And it was on this landing on the second, so the stairs were covered with leaves inside. And it was like, I never populate my pieces. I don't do that. I do words to allude to the human experience. And then these started to bring in a sort of emotion and a temporality. Because leaves go through a cycle. Life is a cycle. All these things are cycles, but the leaves began to add something. And then a little bit later, birds came in, because there's a number of times when someone has passed in my life, I get these weird I have these weird visits of birds. So birds came to represent those that have crossed over. So, but this also, when I began writing directly, this is all silkscreen. The words are silkscreen. Then I began writing in the words, and that will come up again later. So that's winter. So now we're going to move to in Asheville. I don't know how many people here. Anybody to Asheville?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, been to the Biltmore House? Okay. So I did a couple replication jobs for the Biltmore estate. One took 16 months. One took 26 months. I embroidered 8 hours a day for 16 months. Remember, anyone here taking that workshop tomorrow? I have embroidered. But when I was working, I did replication. They have something in their collection, and I make a copy using modern materials. Like I might switch out silk that doesn't last for comb cotton sateen. I do it as close to I can to get an effect that looks like the original. I don't go back and do all the old dyeing techniques or anything. I use modern materials, and next dye, things like that. And so, but I still, for my sanity, 26 months a long time, 18 months a long time. And so you've got to do something for yourself while you're doing these huge projects. So I started working with textile inks. And so this is a piece that is done more, the underneath fabrics were dyed, and then it was painted with textile inks. It was a pivotal shift in my my working method, and also in the way I work. We had gone through 2 droughts. I've been in Asheville 29 years, and we had had 2 significant droughts where we were on very, very strict water restrictions. And so now, dyes take a lot of water. Right now I have outdoor, sort of outdoor kitchen. Sometimes it's really cold, but they're still outdoors. And all my studio practices use rainwater for them, because water is the next issue that we gotta, it's a coming issue. And so I've pretty much, everything I do in the studio is done with rainwater. My gardens and everything else too. But this is done with textile inks, and this was when I was in a studio. When I first moved to Asheville, I lived in the Continental building, and it was in an industrial studio. It was illegal to live there when I lived there. Now you can live there, but there were 2 of us that he put in like a counter and a bathroom, and we could live there. But I loved it. It was 15-foot ceilings, the Continental is where they unloaded the cotton onto the trains. So there's a series that had loading docks, because this is the outside loading dock at one end of the building. And Asheville is it's a mountain town, but it's near the railroad. It has a lot of history. It's got a lot of history. And so these are like words or letters that you can see that represent the sort of old signs that you see on the brick building. Sometimes they've been painted over, whatever, but they allude to something, but often you don't know all of it, because it's just a snippet of the letters that might say parking, could say something. So this was a shift into the textile inks. And then I'm still trying to process that fire, right? Still trying to process the fire. So my sister and I can say it with a light heart now, but it was pretty traumatic. We spent days sifting through the ashes trying to find something. My mom had we tried to find a bolt of solid metal. Like solid metal. Not like metal, but solid metal. And she had this solid metal nutcracker. And we hunted for 2 days through the ashes to find it. We found it. But the things you found were metal. You didn't find textiles, you didn't find paper, you didn't find all these other things. And so we also found she had a heavy duty steel recipe box, sorry, I talked with my hands. A steel recipe box. And so and I apologize if I get emotional, so I found the recipe box in the ashes, and when I opened it, it changed the course of my career, because for one minute, I saw the recipe cards, and then they dropped into ashes. And it just was the most amazing thing I've ever experienced, but it was, for one moment, I saw those words. Wow. And so, years later, I found a way to make words survive a fire. And so, I switched to a new imagery. I work a lot with wood-fired ceramics. But I came to it not because I like fire. A lot of pyromaniacs are wood firers. I'm not a pyromaniac. I just wanted specifically to write words that could survive a fire. So I went on some pivotal trips. Again, things come out of my life. So I went to Japan. I was in Japan in high school and college, so it's a big influence on me. I studied there for 2 years. My book, Weaving Rugs, was translated into Japanese. I went back for a long trip. But there's a place in Yamaguchi Prefecture where that's about this sketch in my journal. I'm a big journaler, and all this, you can document my whole life in my journals. And I have the sketch where I did the steps led down to this river. We got on a boat to take a trip. And then I have this other time, which I didn't sketch because I was taking care of a surrogate father, but I had photos in the Seine. You go down these steps, you get on a boat. And so it's like, I started losing significant people. And when you lose someone significantly, there is this weightlessness. So when you go up and down steps, you've got gravity. there is a connection. There is something that is so solid. Those steps are solid, you are solid, there is something. When you get on a boat, there's something different. And I grew up in a 3-canoe family. We had sailboats up and down the coast of Maine. And as an adult, I got into sea kayaking. When you're on the water, it's more spiritual. Your connection to the ground, because you're weightless. Same as ice skating. Ice skating is another kind of thing. You are weightless, sort of. I've never done hang gliding. I think that might be similar. So I should backtrack. So this theme is about a journey. It's the journey going up and down stairs. You go in and out of doors. Some of the doors shut, some of them are open. You pause at landings for rest and reflection. But you're going somewhere, up and down. So then those steps went and you got on a boat, right? So then I took a break because I couldn't figure out what to do next, and I started taking a ceramic class at night, like at the folks, the Finnish American Folk School. I took this class at night. Didn't know I was doing this stuff. I was doing this stuff by the day, and at night I went over there, and I wanted to make something that was solid, and I wanted to write in it. And what came out was vessels. Partly because of my history, I also wove rugs for years and used a bow shuttle. And I'm a gardener, and I collect seed pods. It's all of those things, because all of those things are about a journey. The thread takes a journey, the fabric takes a journey when you weave, you take a journey when you're in a boat, and seeds take a journey every time they exist. So that's back to the blue, and the birds signify people. But then, when I move over here, there was a time period where I began working with wood-fired ceramics. I do not use anything, but I think the wood fire really took me over a decade to get there. But it got me back in touch, not back in touch, but back in touch with the aesthetics of that old house I grew up in. That old house had incredibly old wood. It had hand-blown panes in the windows in the front part of the house. Like I said, it had no lift doorknobs, just lift latches. You couldn't lock it. We had some slide bolts. But there was a beauty to the materials and to the age of that. So I work with clay that has a memory, a history of the earth, of that specific mineral, and I use it unadorned. I might use a little underglaze the same way I would do in an etching plate, put it on and wipe it off. But pretty much I let the clay be itself. And so that monochromatic sort of quietness that allowed, when I began to revisit the textiles, I came back with this quieter palette. And I also came back with that idea, I'm not young. So the older you get, the more life experiences you had and the more ebbing and flowing. I lost my mom last year at the same time my great niece was born. You're so aware of this cycle of coming and going and that. And just like all these birds, are the spiritual beings. You've got the writing in the wallpaper that is the walls have ears. You've got all this stuff that is at the bottom of the ocean, that's bottom of your subconscious, that's bottom layered down and back of you. When my siblings, I got 2 sisters and a brother, we get together and we try and remember the lasagna that Mom used to make. We all make it just like she does. And yet all of ours is very different. That subconscious and that memory is so layered over time, and it gets more and more layered. So this is the idea of sort of using the water and that as a stand-in for our subconscious memory and all the people and all the vessels, because I use the vessel to stand in for the self and a being, all those that are sort of in our subconscious. And this one vessel is yielded and lit in the here and now. We also you have, like the walls have ears and that vibration. This is about that vibration and that energy between 2 people. I use the vessel, it's a vessel, could be a sarcophagi, but I think of it as a vessel, but it stands in for entities or people. So, and that one's another in that series. So again, all that stuff that is in our subconscious and layers and layers. So I think that, I've said a lot, I could go on for a long time. I think you can sort of get that idea, but I would like to take some questions. First I have to say, come on, Tommy. So now someone else has to hold this. Tim, can I ask you to hold this?
Sure.
Because you have, so I do these wood-fired vessels, and I also do these little meditation vessels that were inspired by holding an injured chimney swift. And a chimney swift, if you know, they migrate from Mexico all the way up to, I don't know if they come up this way, but they come up the Appalachians and they go up to Maine and Cape Breton and all that. They take the chimneys in Asheville on their migrations, and I've seen thousands. And at dusk, it's like the reverse of the bats of the Carlsbad pattern, where at dusk all the birds go into the chimney. And they have these tines in their tail feathers, like nails, because they can never land. Somehow they've evolved and their legs cannot support the body. So they go into the chimney and they stick these sort of nails in the tail feathers into the mortar and rest. And then in the morning, they go out and they can fly over 500 miles in a day. But they cannot rest because they cannot pause. And so that's a pretty epic journey. And this guy's about to go on an epic journey. So this is a little something for you that represents, to me, a journey. And also gives you something to hold. And so inside, most of the things I use are for a reason, or symbolic, or whatever. I don't just pick things up. And so the glass I use, this is a little vessel, it's got some glass inside. So that glass is Vino Verde. It's Casa Garcia Vino Verde. When I was in New Bedford, it was the house wine. It has a wonderful lace label, a pale blue bottle. But Vino Verde, anyone know what Vino Verde means? So what does it mean?
Young wine.
Young wine, but also what else?
Green.
Well, you have
Green.
to drink it. You do not keep it because it does not store. It's not a storing wine. It means you live in the moment and you enjoy it in the here and now. And so when you're in a boat, you have to be present. And so that is the glass. But it's also funny because there's another connection, just you want the whole story, right? And so when I was in New Bedford, it's a Portuguese community. It's almost English as a second language. And you know, everybody, if you're Portuguese, you know chorizo and linguiça. You know, those are the two Portuguese sausages. They put it in kale soup. That's the big thing there, kale potato soup. But in my grandmother's cookbook, and I need to go back and check it, it's either from the 40s or the 50s or something, but when you make borscht in that cookbook, you add linguiça or chorizo. I can't remember what off the top of my head. And that must be from traders that brought that Portuguese sausage up to Finland, because that's the way she made her soup, and it's the way it's in the recipe. So that is the connection for that glass, and because it's blue, and blown away on it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
If anyone has questions, I'll take some questions, or if you want to just find me afterwards. But I'm happy to answer questions about anything.
One of your pieces has resist as one of your techniques. Can you talk about using that?
I use a potato resist, either potato dextrin resist, which gives this crackle pattern, or I use a laundry starch resist. So the same laundry starch that you starch your shirts with, you can make a paste, like porridge sort of, and spread it over fabric. And then, this is funny, just one more funny story. So I did yardage of this. I did a huge curtain and I had to do these templates for making silkscreen. So I needed to get it, we're so humid in Asheville, it's crazy. And so it won't crack if it's humid because it doesn't really dry. So I go to the laundromat, I put all this stuff in the dryer. I have not thought about this years. So I put it in the dryer. These are like 4x8 sheets of fabric. I crunch them up like paper, put them in the dryer. And then I have to, right when they come out, I gotta crack them. So I take them over to the table where you fold your laundry, and there's all these people folding their laundry, and I run this fabric over the corner of the table, and it sounds like breaking glass. It was so funny. It was just hilarious to look on these people's faces, because it looks like white fabric. Because you don't see the laundry starch, it's white fabric with laundry starch. And here I am, rending it over the fabric, and it sounds like breaking glass. But then once it's broken, even if it gets humid, it's got cracks, and I can take that thickened dye, put it into those cracks, steam it, and the pattern of the cracks of the pastries is left in the fabric. So this is a potato dextrin starch that does that, and then there's these more linear pieces that is the laundry starch. So that's the resist I use. Yeah. Anyone else? Another question about anything?
Where do you get your energy from?
Well, actually, you know what? I live alone, I work alone, I'm an introvert. Right now, I'm on. But, because I'm excited about what I do and I love what I do. I feel very fortunate that the way my journey unfolded, I was able to do what I wanted. And I'm pretty stubborn. I'm not sure if that's a finished trait or not. But if you love what you do, you have energy. Yep, so all you young people, I hope you find what you love, something that you love to do.
Yeah.
That's my advice, find something you love to do, then you love life. Any other questions?
Is your book still available on the Red Rocks?
It should be, it may be, I haven't searched recently. There's probably copies out there, they might be used, I don't
You
know
can,
if it's.
I found it.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes, you can.
It's used, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great book, it's a color, and if you happen to get a hardcover, when I did my thesis, I had to petition the dean, and this is young people, stick to your ideas. I did not want my thesis, this is this color, this is what my thesis looked like, and I'm gonna bind my thesis in a black cover. I petitioned the dean, mine is an orange cover. It's the only one on the shelf,
It's
but it's got an
beautiful.
orange cover.
It's
So the same Rand Grove book has an orange cover. But it has a great design section, it's not just weaving, and it has a number of Finnish artists in it. Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah, highly recommend it, of course I would, I'm biased, but. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming out.